Iowa is full of small to mid-sized towns with their own mall. And for our first stop, let's start small with the Center Mall in Sioux Center. A tiny but interesting little mall with some interesting tenants. Let's go for a walk. It took me a while to figure out the timeline behind this mall, as there is a lot of crosstalk between the Terra Center Mall in Sioux City and then another Center Mall in Council Bluffs. But I found something anyway. According to the Sioux City Journal, construction on the Center Mall began in 1988 as a central business project by the Sioux Center Redevelopment Corporation. The mall was suitably small, keeping with the Sioux Center itself, which is a town of maybe 5,000 people at the time. That population has been growing, but even today, it is a town of less than 10,000 people, though that might change if the pattern continues. Center Mall's official opening would be November 6, 1991, when De Jong's True Value hardware store opened up shop and more tenants would trickle in over the next year, seeing over a dozen businesses in its halls, some relocated and some new, which, for a mall this size, it is a lot. In fact, in March 1992, it is reported to be at 90% occupancy. One of the stores to have relocated into the mall was Casey's Bakery, which was a long-standing sweets maker going back to 1946. They're still around today, and I gotta say, they're a pretty cool store. You should stop in if you're in the area. I do find it interesting that this mall, of all places, has all of the state flags on display. And they range from pretty good to a outright sin against vexillology. Iowa's is pretty good, but it could be better. But at least they're above North Carolina's, which is just the Wish.com version of Texas. But still, I'll take 100 North Carolina and Iowa flags versus all of those generic blue flags that all look the same. At least Virginia's puts a little bit of breast on display. Fast forward to today, and the mall hasn't really changed too much. Some businesses have come and gone. The aforementioned hardware store is no longer in the mall, but it still retains Casey's Bakery. If you're into sweets, I would recommend their shop, and no, they don't pay me to say that. The mall also retains other small businesses like a bridal shop, a boutique shop, a spa and salon, while also hosting some more recognizable names like Maurice's, Hallmark, and Pizza Ranch. It even hosts a 5-screen cinema. For a city-owned mall, I believe it actually does fairly decently, especially for a downtown mall. And of course, the display of the state flags wouldn't be complete without the stars and stripes. Okay, there are some chains here. But man, there's a cozy small town feel about it. Now, wasn't that a neat little place? But we still got another one in the pipe. Let's get going and head for Spencer. And now the Southpark Mall in Spencer, Iowa. And we already have a problem. In Moline, Illinois, there's also a mall called Southpark Mall, and since it's considered as part of the Quad Cities, Davenport's reporting on that particular mall practically overrides anything else known as Southpark Mall. Until you think to add a space in the right spot. For a moment, I thought they knew I was coming and shut the fountain off. Turns out it's just on a cycle. "25 Shop Mall opens in Spencer today." According to the Des Moines Register, the Southpark Mall in Spencer was slated to open on August 6, 1980, hosting original anchors Woolco, JCPenney, with Star Drug signed on as a junior anchor. Finally, Spencer would have its own outlet of central enclosed shopping, with stores like Zales, Hallmark, Tea Galaxy, and Maurice's, just to name a few. Now, despite my efforts, information is rather dry out here on the mall, so it's difficult to parse what exactly happened in these halls. But despite the unlikely location for a mall, both in a small town and its position in an open field west of Spencer, it had to have enjoyed some success over the years, even as it had helped establish a small retail corridor over the 90s and the 2000s. And it did have its share of events like farm expos, club meets, and even an appearance by a contestant of the Nashville Star, Sean Mayer, in 2008. Woolco apparently didn't last long, shutting its doors in 1983 to be replaced by a Wal-Mart. And if the summary I found is true, then that anchor has had quite the turnover between then and now. When Wal-Mart left to become a supercenter across the street in the 90s, it would turn over to a store called Jack's, which was then bought out and converted to Shopko in 1997, before closing once again in 2001. And for the longest time, it would remain vacant. However, in 1996, it was reported that Southpark Mall would gain Dunham Sports. And speaking of, it looks like Dunham Sports started in a junior anchor spot before shifting over into the old Woolco building, and then in the early 2010s, they shifted back over into their original spot and even cannibalized mall space. This is just a guesstimate, so don't quote me on that. But what you can quote me on is that today, that Woolco building is largely home to Hobby Lobby. At least as of the making of this video. This half is looking a little empty, isn't it? When I arrived in 2023, I felt as if I had rediscovered the classic Dead Mall feel here in Iowa, and there were many places that struck that feeling on this road trip. The crowds are thin, there are a couple mall walkers or people sitting down in the food court, and while there are businesses here, the lack of occupancy is still obvious enough to bring this mall closer to a surreal experience. And I think one of the reasons this mall has lasted for so long is because of its proximity to what is known as the Iowa Great Lakes. And even then, it's competing against the Great Lakes Mall. I wasn't even aware of that one until recently. One thing I am going to point out is that this mall is almost immaculate. There aren't any maintenance issues that I can spot. The floors are clean and well maintained, if a little worn. Even the ceiling appears to be clean of dust, which is something that a lot of middling malls struggle with. So, despite the vacancy, it looks pretty good, right? Well, there's one problem. The biggest obstacle for this mall would manifest in summer 2024, as the region suffered a major flood, with Southpark Mall treading a reported 16 inches of water. That is nothing to sneeze at. It was reported by Radio Iowa that the mall would reopen after repairs were made to the mall, and as of November 1st, 2024, it sounds like things are starting to get back on track. Perhaps a new chapter is about to begin for Spencer's Southpark Mall, and I do wish them the best. However, I am going to miss the old school look of this place, as it sounds like it's all going to be turned into something else entirely. Until next time, Spencer and Sioux Center, this is Doomie Grunt wishing you and the Center Mall and Southpark Mall farewell and good luck in the future.